The experts of the Chinese Academy of Forestry are attempting to determine the species and origin of the trees used in the samples from an ancient shipwreck. But the wood is in very poor condition, and it's easily damaged with handling. The experts finally turned to a wax sealing method. After cutting the wood sample into small pieces, they submerge the pieces in liquid wax, refrigerate for 2 days, and then cut them into very thin slices. Examination of the slices under the microscope shows that the wood is probably oak from a country in the northern hemisphere, such as China. But these woods are from a shipwreck in Kenya. On Patty Island, 10-year-old Bally often hears a mysterious voice from the ocean in his dreams. He dreams of running toward the beach where he hears the voice as it repeats the same words over and over. He is perplexed by the vivid dreams.
Mama, jana nilikuwa nimelala. Nilikuwa na ndoto. Wazazi wangu walikuja na meli kutoka upande wa juu. Wamekuja kuishi hapa mara kwa mara. Mpaka sasa hivi mimi ni mtoto wa mchini.
It seems strange for a young African boy to dream of such a faraway land. Half of the world's population lives within 200 kilometers of the sea. Many people are both mesmerized and terrified by the ocean. But for the people of Lamu Archipelago, it is their home. Muhammad and his partners are known as ocean hunters because they hunt marine animals requiring great skill and stamina. This kind of ability was once common throughout the world, but is gradually disappearing with the progress of human civilization. Hunting in the ocean is an adventure fraught with uncertainty. Often it's a contest of wits between the hunter and the hunted. Lobsters are quick to escape into a cave or crevice in the rocks at the slightest hint of danger. Capturing them is difficult, even for an experienced hunter like Muhammad. The dark caves between the reefs, over 20 meters deep, present a grave threat to the hunters. But the high price of lobster in some high-end restaurants makes the risk worth the reward. Sometimes they find something unexpected. An antique porcelain shard found off the coast of the islands may be worth even more than the lobsters. Divers who make such finds quickly become legends on Lamu Archipelago. The stories about locals finding porcelain shards piqued the interest of the archaeologists. The shards might prove clues to an ancient Chinese shipwreck, so they begin exploring the seabed for themselves, following the leads provided by the fishermen.
你这是什么情况？现在就是目前发现什么遗址的痕迹没有？
现在基本上没有发现，就是人工啊、遗址的或者遗物的痕迹，基本上都没有发现。
This area is close to Shanga village on Paddy Island. The archaeologists have made a map marking several locations where porcelain shards were found to guide them. If they are to find even the smallest pottery shard, however, they will need luck as much as the map. The archaeologists come back empty-handed, but are not ready to give up.
这地方特别浅。
咱们一直说沉船，有可能沉船为什么是在这边？我们这边不探讨人家肯尼亚这些渔民他们用什么方式，或者说用什么我们不太熟悉的这个速度和技术什么的，这我们不去探讨。但是说，就我们学了这么多年来讲，他上下只用4分钟，他也跑不了多远。
我180。
This time, the archaeologists have the fishermen on board who made the original find.
那走吧。是这个位置吗？
我们现在把今天的照过，这个是他发现第一个大罐子的地方，那个他坐船带回去，但是呢，这个大罐子被岩石礁石给敲破了。
23米，多少？23米是吧？哎，你问他这个，他知道下面那个底是什么底的？就海床那个底是沙子还是石头？
所以有一些岩石，有一些小的石头和沙。
啊，沙和石头。
如果说发现了零星的这些陶罐或者说中国瓷片这一块零星的，我说是零星的，把自己这个带着绘图板，拿着相机，把自己的方位角量下来之后，直接提取。
The fisherman has seen porcelain shards on the seabed a number of times. 2 years ago, he even found an intact jar. This made the archaeologists confident that they would find something.
我们下到30米，39。我们没到下到，没下底，因为底下就是一个大坑。我们就在坑的边缘，然后外围看了一圈，没什么，比较干净，就上来了。来，
The archaeologists realize they have to take another look at the information they have.
Mimi kama mwakilishi wa Wavuvi nikawakataza wavuvi kwamba wakiona hichi kitu baharini kama hichi wasiokote. Wakaenda kwa udakili ule mtu, lakini sikuchukua niache, sikawa iko nje.
他这边，我只是想是知道，就是说他今年给我提供的这些线索的这个海域。 是他重新发现过陶罐，或者说中国瓷片呢，还是说依然延续10年的这些记忆？
The formerly confident fishermen begin to feel guilty at their lack of success, and the archaeologists are feeling frustrated. Meanwhile, Smith is in a nearby village examining porcelain shards in the storeroom of his own home. Most of them are very ordinary. He is only interested in the ones with a unique pattern or other outstanding characteristics.
This is the oldest Chinese porcelain. All these are old Chinese, but this very good piece because of the flower and it is unique. This type is very little. This type many we have, but this type very little because you can hear the sound of the porcelain, Chinese porcelain.
Smith is the owner of a jewelry shop. The most popular items in his shop are the jewelry pieces made of porcelain shards. He transforms the shards into jewelry that people buy for friends, relatives, and spouses. But Smith always keeps the best shards at home, and he rarely shows them to outsiders.
So these pieces, we call it Chinese porcelain, but in Arabic we call it sahan sin. In Swahili we call it bakuli ya sini. Sin means China in Arabic. So these pieces are very old, and olden days people, they used these plates long time ago. So these pieces are unique, and I love Chinese porcelain, for me.
Every morning, Smith drinks tea from his Chinese porcelain teacup while he contemplates new designs for his jewelry. Over the years, he has collected many shards of Chinese porcelain and is giving them new life through his jewelry. He leads a simple life with the porcelain shards. Although he has a large collection of shards, the archaeologists, for all their efforts, have come up empty-handed. Porcelain can be seen everywhere in Kenya. The museums of Nairobi, Mombasa, and Lamu Island all display Chinese porcelain from the Tang, Song, Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties, spanning over 1,000 years. There is an historical background to this huge collection. Starting from the 9th century, the east coast of Africa became a popular stop in maritime trade. One common commodity was Chinese porcelain, and many items were bought by people in Kenya. This is a famous pillared tomb in Mambray that is typical of those used for Muslim believers. But there are pieces of Ming Dynasty porcelain inlaid on the sides of the pillars. Extant tombs decorated in this way are very rare in the world. This tomb is not only an indicator of the high status of the deceased, but also a connection with China. The Mambray site has been quiet for several days. Only a few unremarkable relics were found. Suddenly, Ding Yu finds a small piece of porcelain that at first doesn't seem to hold much promise. At the time, Ding never imagined that this small shard was the potential key for unlocking the mystery of 600 years ago. Chinese merchant ships began taking advantage of favorable winds to sail during the winter monsoon in the 9th century. At most, it would take about 6 months to reach today's Malacca, Sri Lanka, and southern India, where they traded with Arab merchants. The Arab merchants then shipped Chinese products as far west as the east coast of Africa. This was a very economic form of maritime trade at the time, but it might also be possible that some Chinese ships traded directly with Africa. People can still see a great deal of foreign cultural influence in China's Quanzhou, one of the major starting points of the maritime Silk Road. This dance has been a tradition in Quanzhou for a century, but the dance moves and costumes are clearly not traditional Chinese culture. The dance reportedly originated in the Song Dynasty to pray for good weather. Ye Tingji, governor of Quanzhou during the Southern Song Dynasty, reported that the music for the dance was a type of foreign music and that the half-naked dancers splashed water in the street as they danced and begged for food. Locals say that the Africans traveling on Chinese ships brought this foreign music to Quanzhou. This was the first time Professor Xu Runlin of Sun Yat-sen University has visited Quanzhou, but he is not interested in the scenery. He only wants to get to Shunpu village as soon as possible.
你们这个桃棵树有多少年了？他们有听说这是压船底过来的，
有这个说法是吧？是压船底过来的。是的，是这物件载去到尾，空船要倒来，有法载倒来。
他说东西载过去那边卖，然后空船要回来是用那个来垫底，来的。他要带我们去。
好，谢谢。
Professor Xu Runlin, a marine biologist, is interested in the local oyster shell houses. According to local oral tradition, Chinese ships long ago brought the shells from Africa as ballast on their return to China. Xu has never seen such large shells before, some of which were over 35 centimeters long.
"现有对于泉州地区所了解的牡蛎分布的这个动物地理学上的一些信息，没有发现本地有这么大的牡蛎记载。"
Women living on the coast of Fujian have long had a tradition of collecting oysters at low tide. Oysters are very common in the area, but the local oysters are very different from those used for the oyster shell houses. The huge oyster shells may have come from a port somewhere along the maritime Silk Road, maybe even from the east coast of Africa. On the last day of every month, Sam Yuli Mu, an elder of the village, tells the children of Shanga village stories about their island under a tree on the beach. In many parts of Africa, oral traditions are a way to keep the local history alive. Many children learn about their distant ancestors through stories passed down from generation to generation. The locals truly believe that the story of over 600 years ago about the Chinese shipwreck and the Chinese sailors is real history. An ancient Chinese document seems to support the story told by the Kenyans. This 500-year-old map shows the 7 stops Zheng He's fleet made on his 4 trips to the east coast of Africa, and some of the place names are very similar to Mombasa and Malindi. The study of the oyster shell houses of Chuanzhou continues. Professor Xu has discovered that the mangroves off Lamu Island provide a perfect habitat for oysters. But the oysters are much smaller than those used for the oyster shell houses. Professor Xu continues his research by going through the relevant literature. He finds a picture of a type of large oyster in a marine biology text called Ostrea rivularis gould. It lives in Southeast Asia and India, on the route of the maritime Silk Road. However, Professor Xu is not convinced by one picture. He discovers other marine life attached to the oysters. But these organisms are common throughout the world, so they are no help in determining whether or not the oyster shells came from Africa.
最远应该来自于印度，在海上丝绸之路的这个过程中，中国的船呢又在印度装上了来自于非洲或者说阿拉伯国家的货物返航。那么这个过程中，由于这个回来的货物相比去的货物要轻得多，所以呢，取这个牡蛎壳作为压舱物，这个观点是可以被接受的。
There is no conclusive answer about the origin of the shells. Africa is mentioned in ancient Chinese texts as early as the Tang Dynasty, but there were no first-hand accounts and few sources cited. There is no evidence that any Chinese reached Africa at the time. The most persuasive evidence is still Zheng He's map. But what few people know is that it was not actually made by Zheng He. It was made much later and based on other documents and assumptions. These stories of Chinese ships visiting Africa seemed so authentic, yet so hard to prove. The ocean has provided humans with such a great bounty, but it does not give up its secrets easily. Salim is enjoying a tranquil dawn on Lamu Island as he prepares his secret potion for a patient. The faint smoke in the room is mixed with the fragrance of fresh herbs, but only sunlight penetrates the tightly closed windows. This process is so secret that very few others beside himself know it. Preparation takes several hours. Meanwhile, his assistant is outside waiting to begin the trip with his donkey. Salim is a doctor who is famous and well respected on Lamu Island for his healing skills. He always makes a round in the village before he starts out to let everyone know he's going to treat someone. The patient has been sick in bed for several days and is in great pain. Salim's arrival comforts the patient and gives him hope. Salim begins by asking the patient some questions to better understand his medical condition. Whenever someone on the island is sick, they trust Salim to heal them. In the end, Salim diagnoses the patient's illness as rheumatism, which is common on the island.
Acá. Asimame puedo.
Salim carefully lays out his tools beside the bed and begins the treatment. It looks very similar to the traditional Chinese cupping therapy, but using sterilized buffalo horns. He may use as many as 8 horns, depending on the severity of the illness. Less than an hour later, the patient's condition is improved. As the patient expresses his gratitude and praise, Salim prepares to return home. His diagnosis and treatment methods are a lot like those of traditional Chinese medicine. Salim says these methods have been passed down from an ancestor. It seems unlikely that this is only coincidence. China possessed the world's most advanced ship-making technology in the Song Dynasty about 1,000 years ago. Historical records indicate that several doctors would always accompany the crew on long sea voyages. When the ship stopped at a port, the Chinese doctors would also provide medical assistance to the locals. It's possible that when the Chinese ships made a stop, they not only introduced the locals to wealth in the form of silk and porcelain, but to health in the form of traditional Chinese medicine as well. This could provide further evidence that Chinese ships long ago reached the east coast of Africa. The archaeologists have turned up nothing after days of searching the sea near Shanga village. Today, they decide to explore the sea on the northeast side of Paddy Island. The seabed looks the same as in the areas they explored before. A lot of silt that seems to be hiding many secrets. This is a process that requires great patience. Overlooking any detail could cause the archaeologists to miss an important discovery. So by necessity, it's a very slow, painstaking process. Suddenly, they find a porcelain shard that looks like it came from ancient China. Continuing to explore the coast should turn up more discoveries.
Only Chinese ceramics. You like bananas then?
The archaeologists have better luck in the village. They find many porcelain shards from different times and places, including those that came from China. Almost every family in the village seems to have a collection. Though they found more here than in Shanga village, they still haven't found evidence of a Chinese shipwreck. A few villagers digging on the beach seem to have found something valuable, but the archaeologists find it funny rather than interesting.
这个找中国船太难了。
These scattered porcelain shards are like links to a nearby forgotten history. It's anybody's guess where this lead will take them.
这个地方的潮水啊，它还不是那种每天都涨降的。这个地方的水有时候3天才能涨起来，今天还会滴水。
The wetland is close to the coastline, so sediment from the seabed washes ashore here. If a Chinese ship wrecked nearby, some remnant of the wreck might have washed ashore here.
All of us correct. Yeah, there is one over here. I think I think so. Is that Chinese? Yeah. Chinese. Chinese? Yeah, Chinese. Go right. This one. Yeah. We have so many along the beach. Along the beach. So, because these have been brought by the water.
Oh? So this possibly is pulled from the sea.
From the sea. From the sea.
Following a lead provided by locals, the Chinese archaeologists make their way under a blistering sun. The village finally comes into view. Mazuri is a young man from CU village. Right after the tide goes out in the early morning, he comes here to search for porcelain shards washed up from the sea. He arrives early, hoping he'll find something special before someone else does. He plans to use the many he's collected over the year to make gifts for his family and friends for New Year's Day. This is a happy time for Mazuri. He and his daughters sing while they string Chinese porcelain shards to hang over the door or on the eaves. This is a long-standing tradition on Patty Island. The islanders believe the Chinese porcelain shards will bring them good fortune. But no one knows how this tradition began. Meanwhile, Missouri's wife is preparing food in the kitchen.
Subiri kidogo sasa.
After eating, Missouri is going to visit his friends and give them wind chimes made with porcelain shards. The tinkling of the wind chimes signals the beginning of a new year.
Hello, habari gani? Salamu. Zawadi za mwaka mpya. Kesho ni sikukuu ya mwaka mpya.
People on Patty Island celebrate New Year's Day according to their usual custom. The villagers stop work and gather on the beach to sing and dance by the fire. Chinese people living across the ocean would never imagine that the porcelain their ancestors shipped to Africa would turn up today in this form. The dig in Mambray is coming to a close. The archaeologists are in the work shed sorting through the unearthed porcelain shards. It is up to archaeologist Sui Jian Fung to make a preliminary estimate of the date of the porcelain shards. A shard the size of a thumb suddenly catches his attention, and he knows right away it is unusual. Multiple carbon-14 testing shows that the shard came from the imperial kiln in Jingdezhen and was made around the 15th century in the Ming Dynasty. Porcelain from the imperial kiln was exclusively made for the imperial family and could not be sold. This gives the shard found at the archaeological site in Kenya a special significance. It seems very possible that some imperial porcelain was given to a local leader in a diplomatic exchange. Since Zheng He was sailing under the authority of the emperor, it could very well be that it was he that brought the imperial porcelain here. In addition to Lamu Island, the marine archaeologists explored 4 other sites. They took wood samples from a shipwreck they discovered at one site for analysis. The samples were sent to the China Academy of Forestry in Beijing, where the experts determined that the wood could have come from China. The heyday of marine trade is long gone, but those days have left their mark for the people of today to find. The Chinese ship that allegedly sank near the east coast of Africa is still waiting to be found. The joint Kenyan-Chinese team is continuing this quest. Sanga Village on Patty Island, near where the Chinese ship supposedly sank, is near CU Village, where many porcelain shards were found. It seems possible there was another version of the story in which CU was actually closest to the shipwreck. The Swahili civilization may well have had relations with remote Oriental civilization in the distant past. But uncovering the history of those past glory days will require people with real determination and dedication to continue searching and making discoveries. Change is the only constant in the long march of time.